This is a special Fragments of Silicon advisory that, no matter how stupid it is, 12 p.m. is noon and 12 a.m. is midnight.
All right, welcome to another installment of Fragments of Silicon. I'm your host, Adam. Joining me as always are my tag team partners, Galax and Petty Fan. Let us get to the news. Uh, I suspect, I guess a bit of a programming update, first of all. We are planning on having a new episode of Moonhawk Studios Presents, even in spite of Mac's recent troubles with apartment flooding again. Like, it doesn't seem to stopped him from, he still plans on showing up tonight.
This one was caused by nature, not dumb fuckery.
Still caused some damage.
Yeah.
Though maybe not as much as he thought. But we'll save that for later on. So with that in mind, let's start us off this week.
It continues to be hot. There's not really a whole lot else going on, partially because of me not having energy to do stuff when it's hot. Let's see. Unsurprisingly, Team Palace did not do well in the Splatfest. But I was surprised that Amusement Park got like an entire 50% of the vote, and I thought it would be more like 10-45-45. But yeah, anyway, I still had fun, and they announced another Splatfest out of kind of nowhere for next month. It'll be what kind of grain-based food could you eat every day? Bread, rice, or pasta. So that's at least more, normal of a question. So we still got a bit left to go, and that's good because I am going to need to play a lot to catch up on the catalog for this season. This weekend is the Clam Festival, but I don't think I'm going to be doing anything aside from maybe going to check out the craft fair on Saturday. I think that's all I got.
So I guess it's my turn.
Yeah.
Well, still helping Mom try and find a job. So that's fun in air quotes. Also trying to keep her from buying stupid shit. I don't think she understands the fact that she doesn't have money coming in. She can't go drop a bunch of money on Temu or Amazon or,
I can relate. Anyway.
Yeah. So far, we've had more calls from the cable company trying to beg us to stay, and it's getting to the point of annoyance.
I'm like, just tell them to literally fuck off.
We've been trying that. We've tried blocking the numbers.
I mean, like, say you're considering legal action for harassment or something.
That's probably the next step because this is ridiculous.
Yeah, it's like you're not going back.
Yeah. But yeah, it's hopefully they get the message that we are done. But I guess we'll find out if we have to start lawyering up, right?
Or at least, the threat of lawyering up.
Yeah.
That's usually enough to do the trick.
Fair enough. And it also has been fairly hot here, but luckily we got a pool in the backyard we can jump into now.
Yeah.
When the heat index says 111 and the pool is saying 85, guess what we're going to be in?
The sauna.
Now the cooler pool.
I mean, the sauna's the outside in this scenario.
Fair. Yeah, because Missouri, where we're at, is probably pretty close to Florida. It is a humid hellhole here. It feels like I am sitting in a soup. Send help.
I'm like, I guess that's anything else?
Not really.
I guess it's my go. I'm like, well, let's see. Still dealing with the fallout of my brother's recent troubles. Just the latest pack of troubles that's been besetting him this year. It's kind of amazing that he can stay as chipper as he does, quite frankly. Considering all that he's lost this year. But he's currently looking for a new job and looking for a new car, though his absolutely terrible credit score is hampering that. Mm-hmm. He tried to convince me to co-sign on a car, and I'm like, that guffaw sums everything up on my end.
Yeah, with our income.
Not just that, but his unreliability.
Mm-hmm.
If
he misses payments, they're going to come after Adam, basically.
Yeah, I'm like, it's like my mom co-signed on a car with him like over a decade ago, and that almost happened on multiple occasions. In fact, he was late on his now former car payments there due to various circumstances, and his church had to step in. Once again, circumstances are different, but they are still kind of the same in regards, because he's not very stable. He's not in a very stable position.
Right.
And that seems to be cascading down to maybe the latest bit of trouble brewing. It's regarding his ex and the kids, and maybe some movement towards his ex seeking full custody there. I don't know. It could just be a threat. Like I said, all the dramatics are going on with him right now.
Yeah.
So
and you're kind of wishing you were just far enough where you could just sit back and eat some popcorn instead of, it happening on your doorstep.
Believe me, yeah, it's like, I wish that were the case, but it isn't.
Mm-hmm. Believe me, I've been there.
Right. So outside of that, just scheduled my yearly vision exam for next month.
Must be nice to be able to get it yearly. Mine's every 2 years.
I mean, they insist now because of the diabetes diagnosis. So, they want to keep track of my eyes to make sure that
that is one of the signs it's getting worse.
I guess fair.
Also, my insurance allows for a yearly eye exam. Also on the bright one of the bright sides of this year's insurance reshuffling that I got, I can now get $350 towards glasses.
Oh man!
Whereas last year it was $150. Right. So
if you can swing getting some transitions, I would highly suggest it. You know, those like lenses.
Yeah,
thing.
I have transitions right now.
Yeah, they are great. Would recommend anyone get those.
Yeah, it's just they're like last time I had to get glasses, those were $500 or something like that.
Yeah.
It's been a while.
I know next year when I'm up for glasses, I'm gonna discuss about getting blue light filters.
I got the blue light filters as well. Like I got top of the line stuff in my eyepieces.
My only issue with blue light filters, I need to see, since I do some color grading stuff for the show, if it throws like how the color looks and stuff, it might be an issue. I might need to get like the clip-on blue light filters, so I can take them off when I'm doing color stuff. You know.
Yeah, I don't have the strongest blue light filters because I've got regular glasses and transitionals.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think that does make a difference. It's been a while. No idea if I'm going to get new glasses this year or not.
Right.
Granted, last year it would have been an issue because I don't know. The optometrist was having a row with the insurance people, where to the point where they could do an eye exam, but anything else I had to go elsewhere. It's because like the vision part of my insurance switched carriers without my knowledge. It still wasn't as bad as what went down between them and my dentist.
Oh God, I vaguely remember hearing that, and I think you still want to punch some people.
I'm like, it wasn't too bad because I got the I got the periodontal, the thing I really needed. Like, it's just going for a follow up. It's like, oh no, we're having so much of a dispute with this carrier that if you come in, we have to charge you.
Yeah.
That ended that.
Unfortunately, like the rest of my dental stuff is all out of pocket, and it's looking like $700-800 per tooth. So that's fun. Don't have acid reflux, kids; it'll destroy your teeth.
Yeah, it's like I have some protection against that. Like, I can get a tooth replaced or something like that. But multiple teeth, that's a bit beyond what I got right now.
Well, like they'd rip the teeth out for free for me, but like if the root canals I need, nope, I got to pay for that out of pocket.
Yeah, like I said, I think I get a certain amount of root canals in a period of time. It's been a while, and I don't need them, so
lucky.
I know I've always had good teeth.
Yeah. Well, my teeth problem are one of those. I had acid reflux that was uncontrolled for over a decade.
Yeah. Anyway, aside from health-related matters, still playing through Halo.
Oh man.
Master Chief Collection. Almost done with the Halo 1. We might talk about this next week because I got a rant about this fucking game and how bad it is.
All right.
I'm like, good God, how did this game ever get fucking popular?
Well, I think part of it, at least the version on the Master Chief Collection is a lesser version.
It's not that. It's not, it's not the actual mechanics. It's the goddamn level design. It's fucking awful. Like, pretty notable, too. But just endless fucking cut and paste corridors of no discernible feature. Like, it's fucking ridiculous. Anyway, but that's a topic for another day.
Right.
Like, anyway, and yeah, I think that's about it for my news. So, merrily we shall roll along to the interview portion of the broadcast. And joining us this week is Kris Dürrschmidt of Crazy Viking Studios.
Hi there.
Hi, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. How about you guys?
We seem to be doing fine.
Mhm.
Well enough. Right. So how we like to get started is we'd like to get to know the people behind the games and behind the studio. And I think we've had you on the show before, but that was like over a decade ago. So we're basically starting from scratch here. So we begin with this question. What got you interested in video games, both on a personal and a professional level?
Sure. I grew up in the era of video games, all the way back when the Atari 2600 came out. So I was a young man, and I was fascinated with the fact that you could control pictures on the television set. Like you can not just watch them, but you can control the basically the shows that you were watching, even though they weren't shows. They're just little. At that time period, they're just giant squares, right? But
Yes.
so it was endlessly fascinating to me that the bleeps and bloops and that were, something that you could do. I never even comprehended that was something that could happen. And I became very obsessed with video games, how they worked, who made them, how are they being made, stuff like that. So growing up, I always loved video games, and that's what got me into it. It was magic. How I got into the video game industry, though, is a bit of a long story, but it is an interesting one. I never thought I was going to work in video games. It's just something I thought was really cool and I was fascinated with. I always wanted to be, like a lot of little kids and stuff, an astronaut or a race car driver or fighter pilot, stuff like that. And then as I got older, I did a lot of drawing, and I wanted to be a comic book artist. And I got accepted to the School of Joe Kubert School of Art and Design for becoming a comic book artist. And 2 weeks before I went to the school, my little brother had a heart condition, and it sucked up all the means of going to college. So backup plan was at the time, and I don't know if it's still true today, but back then the Army would pay for your college if you signed up and served with the Army for a few years. So I was like, okay, well, that's a good way for me to pay for school. And what they don't tell you, though, is once you join the military, it kind of changes you. Things that you liked as a child may or may not be, what you come out with when you leave the military on the other end. So when I left the military, that was kind of like, well, I'm kind of a grown up now. There's probably not a lot of money in making comics, and so I pursued a job with my dad at a place called Northrop Grumman. And while I was there, I helped work on a Navy SEAL submarine project called the ASDS. And while it was cool to work with my dad, and the job paid a insane amount of money for my age, like a ridiculous amount of money, I could not stomach the work. I hated that job so bad that I would drive to work every day and sit in my car for like a half hour to an hour and try to convince myself to go to work. Because I don't know if you guys have ever seen the movie Office Space, but it was like even worse than that. It was just soul sucking. My girlfriend, who is now my wife at the time, I mean, she's my wife now, but my girlfriend at the time, said, hey, let's move out to the West Coast. And, since you're going to, you quit, and let's just go out there and try our luck and reboot our lives, And I did that and moved out here, sold odds and ends stuff like door-to-door vacuum cleaners and knives and jobs like that, used cars, bartending. And one day, and this is how old I am, by the way. I don't know how old you guys are, but back in the day when you were looking for work and stuff, you didn't go onto Monster.com, LinkedIn, or any of these other websites and stuff. You would go to the back, you'd buy a newspaper, a Sunday paper, and look at the back of a newspaper for job listings. And in
That's
the
certainly
paper,
what I was still expected to do by my parents.
oh really? I mean, you could still. I mean, they still have them.
Totally unreasonable.
Yeah, they still have them these days. I mean, papers are harder to come by, but. But I was looking at the back of the Sunday paper, and I found a job that was for a police sketch artist. And I was like, well, that sounds pretty cool because I didn't know what to do with my, with my life at that time. So I was like, that sounds actually pretty rad. Those feelings of being a comic book artist and stuff kind of came back. And I was like, how awesome would it be to be a police sketch artist? That's not something you hear about every day. And so I called the number that was in there, and a game studio answered the phone. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry, I must have dialed the number wrong. And they asked for the number, and I read it to them. They're like, no, that's right. And I was like, well, that's weird. I was calling about becoming a police sketch artist. And they're like, oh, that is weird. Yeah, they must have messed up the ad. They're like, well, if you're applying for a police sketch artist, I guess you're an artist, right? And I was like, well, yeah. And they're like, well, we actually are looking for a background artist. Would you like to apply for that job since we have you? And I was like, yeah, sure. That sounds great. And so I got a job interview. At the time I was living in Portland, Oregon. Didn't have a car or anything, so bothered father-in-law's car to drive all the way up to Seattle and back and forth every day, for a couple of days to do these rounds of interviews and stuff. And at the time, when I went there for the final interview, they're like, "Oh, this is all great and everything. Do you have a traditional portfolio or any traditional art that we could look at?" And I wasn't planning on applying to a video game company or something like that, so I didn't have a portfolio. But what no one knew at the time was that, and this is kind of a famous story about me. You can probably find this anywhere on the internet now. But how I was putting food on the table at the time was I was drawing pornography for a German website. They were paying like $75 to $100 a page. And I had a big briefcase full of this pornography that I was getting ready to ship after the job interview that I just brought with me to mail. And they're like, "Do you have any traditional artwork or portfolio?" I was like, "No, I don't, but I have some art that I was getting ready to ship off to this company in Germany." I said, "But I have to warn you, though, it's not, mainstream art, I guess." I forget how I worded it. I was trying to warn him about it. And so they, this is like before they had a term not safe for work, this is pretty early days. So I was like, I warned them about what kind of says kind of questionable material, and they're like, "It's okay, we'll keep it in here and whatever. Well, let's just have a look at it." So I brought the briefcase in, and the look of horror and amusement on their faces was pretty amazing. And this, they said this art was really awesome. I mean, not the fact that it was pornography, but it was really well drawn. And they wanted to give me a shot, but here's the thing that is kind of the icing on the cake is that I did not know when I was doing these interviews and showing the pornography in the job interview. I mean, these guys must have thought I had big brass balls because the company I was applying for at the time was a Mormon-run company that only made video games for children at the time, and for like the kids.
Look,
games.
It's what I have on hand.
Yeah, and so they were kind of flabbergasted by the whole thing, and I ended up getting the job. So that's the really kind of weird, funny way that I got into the games industry. I don't recommend anybody ever try to pull some shit like that now. Like go to school, get good grades, go to college for video games and stuff like that now. But back then, the video game industry was a very different place.
It was very wild back in the day, yes.
Yeah, it was like the Wild West back then. So
I'd argue it's more wild now, considering some of the people we know.
Okay, I guess we can probably bring up John. Yeah.
I mean, he literally works in porn.
Yeah.
Kinda. So.
Oh, sure. There is that segment of the game industry today. Yeah, for sure.
I'm just saying that's a thing that exists that didn't back then.
Fair.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it kind of did, but going into shit like Custer's Revenge and all that crazy shit from back in the day.
You know what I mean.
I know.
Like, it's not the market it was anyway. So, how long did you last at this Mormon company?
Well, they had to adapt pretty quick. So it started off being like a kids game company, but started doing licensed IP work not too long after that. In order to stay in business, keep up with the times. So we started doing things like Lord of the Rings and Marvel games and Disney games and James Bond and Assassin's Creed and Call of Duty. Like we started doing all these different things. They were pretty strict at first. We actually, like, one of the stories I remember is that when we first got one of the early licensed properties for a James Bond game, they were pretty adamant that James Bond wasn't going to be allowed to use a gun in whatever game that we were making at that company. So we're like, oh, how the hell do we do that? Like, this James Bond. So we came up with really interesting ways where he would do things like use a sleep dart gun or some other gadget or something like that. There's always some kind of reason. So there's like a weird transition period where the company really didn't want to let go of their old. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yes, James Bond, definitely very well known for not shooting people.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like 007 doesn't, that's how you get the moniker. But yeah, it was interesting transitionary period where they really didn't want to let go of their past for a while, but then they realized that they kind of had to, and then we moved over into just making mainstream core, like usually sometimes movie tie-in games and things of that nature for around a decade or so before they got bought out by a different company. The Mormon owners of the company sold their stake in the company and transitioned out about 4 years into when I was there, and it became kind of more of a regular, video game studio from that point on.
And at what point did you make your exit from said company?
I started in 2001 at Kryptonite, and then I left the company in 2012. 2012 to start Crazy Viking Studios.
That's a long time.
Yep. Made a lot of games while I was there, and gained a lot of experience. I mean, I couldn't have done Crazy Viking Studios if I had not gotten all of the experience that I had gotten at Kryptonite. While I was there, I started off as a background artist and then became a 2D animator for 2D art, like what you'd see in Volgar, and then moved on to 3D models and 3D animation, eventually becoming a lead artist, which led a team of artists. And then there was nowhere really to go from there, so I transitioned into a different job role and started at the bottom for game design, and then worked my way all the way up to being a lead designer and managing design teams, and then worked into production and stuff like that. So I learned all aspects of all the different main categories of developing video games and the business of making video games. Pitch writing, proposals, or how to earn business, how much games cost to make, budgeting games, and all that. So if I didn't get that knowledge from working at Kryptonite, I wouldn't have been able to have a successful business today. So it was a pretty cool time period to work there. Even though it was a little sad to me how the company kind of ended, but that's par for the course in the video games industry. Things kind of come and go in a cyclical way.
Right.
Like nothing truly lasts forever. I mean, you got these really big companies that have been around kind of since the beginning, but even then they go through multiple iterations of being sold and bought and sold and bought.
I was about to say there's so much turnover at them. The people who started it are not there anymore typically. There might as well be new companies at this point.
Yeah. I mean, there are exceptions, of course. But,
right.
It's definitely been a topic that's been a hot button on not just this program, but all throughout the industry due to all of the layoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. But putting all that aside, what made you want to make Crazy Viking Studios? What made you want to step into the indie scene as opposed to, working at another developer of some note?
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple of reasons for that. One was out of necessity. My business partner at the time, Taryn, and I worked together quite a bit on several games at Kryptonite, and we have a passion for certain kinds of games. We love action games, more traditional games like action combat stuff. We really have fun making. We enjoy RPGs, action RPGs and things. So we really like those kinds of games. And the company, Kryptonite, we worked on Shinobi together. It was like the last game that we worked on, Shinobi for a 3DS. And right after that, we were, talking to Sega about making other, games like Phantasy Star or New Altered Beast, Golden Axe at the time. And unknown to us, the company was already in a transition state where it was sold to a company called Glue Mobile. And everything from that day forward was going to be mobile titles only. And we didn't like that. We like to make traditional game experiences, and
Right.
and you can't really do that on mobile. You always get these workarounds. Everybody's like, oh, sure, you can do, touch analog sticks and touch
I
buttons
want to
and
see
stuff,
some
but it doesn't feel
psychopath
the
try and do Volgar on a touchscreen.
Well, I would never do that because it would really be a bad experience for
I
folks,
know,
right?
but just like
Yeah.
somebody try and tell you that, and then you just put Volgar in front of there and be like, "All right, beat this."
Oh no, we've gotten that all the time. We get that to this day. Like, I have you brought it to iPhones. I'm like, you're okay. That says a lot about you.
You're psychotic. Good to know.
Yeah. Tell me you've never played the game before by not telling me you've never played the game before.
I know.
Yeah. Anyway, we didn't want, and the company took a turn. And when you make games like that, I mean, there's no fault to people that work in that kind of an industry, but for us, we didn't want to wake up every day and be focused on things like, how do I get my game to make money? Like, what things do I need to do to mentally trick people to spend money in the game store on this mobile app? Because a lot of them are like that. That's basically what they train you to do, is to design a really fancy store, design ways to hook people into buying stuff.
Turn players into pairs. Bullshit like that.
Yeah, whales, the terminology, the whole thing's gross and disgusting.
Yeah.
But we didn't want to do that. After being exposed to it, we're like, oh, hell no, this is not for us. And so we were like, okay, well, what do we do? Do we quit and just go try to find another job, or do our own thing? But here's the thing. At that time period, there was this gold rush. Like, everybody thought that they were going to have the winning lotto ticket in mobile. So every company out there was trying to make iPhone games and have that next lotto ticket win, so everybody was making mobile games. So it didn't matter where you went.
To kind of place this for people at home, this was just before Steam totally opened up, but the iPhone, the App Stores opened.
2013 was also interesting because that's also when we were starting to get the spillback from mobile. Like, this is the year we got Cut the Rope and Angry Birds on consoles and handhelds.
Right.
Yeah, it started to come backwards a little bit. So we just didn't want to do that, and we're like, well, we don't have a choice. If our choices are go work in a mobile game environment somewhere else, go into AAA, and the problem with AAA for us was that we're used to doing more than one thing. Like, when I work on a video game, I do animations and effects and character designs and design and documentation and sometimes music and audio effects, and I do a whole bunch of things. And if you go into AAA, you're the guy that paints a rock for 6 months.
Yeah.
Like, that's all you get to do, and that's like severe monotony.
And also, this is before the 2D game renaissance in the AAA space, so you wouldn't really be able to use your skill set either.
Correct. This is before, when the thinking was, oh, you're making a 2D games, that's like old. And like, now it's like 2D games are not considered old looking. They're just considered to be an artistic choice. Like, there's no reason why we couldn't have made Volgar the Viking in Unreal and still had it be a side-scrolling platformer just as it is, and with 3D models and stuff like that.
Right.
But there wasn't a reason to. Like, what would it have added to the experience? Nothing. But the hand-drawn animations and things like that add something to the game. So that's why we went with that. We could have totally made a 3D game, but we just didn't.
Right. I mean, hand-drawn pixel art and all that was the thing that was really starting to come back to the fore at the time. Because, like, 2D, bit before then, thanks to, like, new Super Mario Brothers, but, like, if you look at the remakes of old games during the 7th gen, they're like Bionic Commando Rearmed and stuff like that, where they're still 3D, but they're 2D. Like,
they're 2. Well, we used to call them 2.5D, where they're 3D games that were locked to old school, like 2D camera perspectives. But, so a lot of really good timing things happened, and we made a lot of really good decisions at the time. So we decided, okay, well, we want to make original content. And the only way to do that is to start our own company. And if we want to make these 2D action games, like, no one else is really doing this at the moment in this way. So the only way, again, to do that is to make our own company, which we did. And so we had a lot of really good...
We're going to make our own company with blackjack and hookers.
Yeah. So the timing of it was just really good. If you look back on this time period when Volgar was hitting, or when it was announced anyway, most of the games that were in 2D were games that were drawn in Flash. Like there wasn't this very particular aesthetic that we're going for, which is like the golden age of CPS2, Capcom, and Magic Sword, Black Tiger, stuff like that. There wasn't much. I can't really even think of any if I look back on that. Almost everything was Flash driven, like Super Meat Boy, Castle Crashers, most anything out of the Behemoth, which is great. Those were really cool, but nothing kind of really looked like that at that time period.
There were a couple of examples, like Braid comes to mind, and Fez.
But Fez is a full 3D game, and
true.
Braid is a painted Photoshop type thing. It's not really sprite work.
Right.
But yeah, there are some 2D games out there, but we hit at the right time, a really good time where there wasn't a lot, and we're actually pretty new. And as you said earlier, like the evolution of Steam was starting to happen right around that time period. And we were one of the early Kickstarter darlings that actually made a game and shipped it and delivered on our promise. Which, if you think about it, Star Citizen was like a month after our Kickstarter over a decade ago, and it still hasn't been finished. So I don't know what that says, but that kind of stuff has been happening a lot. But
I'm pretty sure Star Citizen is just some sort of money laundering scheme at this point.
I would not be shocked to find that out.
But yeah, that's how we decided to do that, how we got into it.
And what was the particular kernel of inspiration that made you want to do Volgar the Viking?
Well, that's just me. So Volgar is me, basically. So that's again, I don't know if this is gonna be an interesting story for you, because it's kind of a silly thing. So when you think about when we're trying to form the company, we were trying to think of. This is right around the same time period where video game companies started coming up with cool names for themselves. So you had things like the Behemoth, and you had things like Team Meat and stuff like that. And like nowadays you have like Probably Monsters, and you have these really cool names. And we didn't want to have our studio name be like two guys that make video games. Like we couldn't. Like it's just like we had to stand out. We had to have a cool logo. We had to have a name that kind of
totally would be a valid studio name.
Well, yeah, these days it would be, yeah, sure. But we're trying to figure that out, and I don't remember who said this. It might have been Taryn or one of our friends who were around the dinner table at the time or something. Said, "Well, I had this reputation for being energetic and." Kind of a large presence at work when I was at Kryptonite, and I'm a pretty big guy and a big Viking guy, and he's like, well, why don't you just call it Crazy Viking Studios, because you're a crazy Viking. And we just looked at each other and laughed and said, yeah, why not? And then we just said, yeah, we'll just have a Viking holding up a sword or something like that, and that's what we ended up doing. Then we didn't make that logo. A really cool guy named Edward made that for us, but we just told him the story and he laughed, and then he drafted that in like a day or two, and that's what we stuck with. As far as like why we chose to make Volgar the Viking first, we knew we wanted to make an arcade-like platforming game with some kind of combat, because that's what we excel at. We from working on The Legend of Spyro: The Eternal Night, which was like the swan song for the GBA, and Shinobi, coming off of Shinobi, we really wanted to do something that had some combat in it and a kinetic feel. So we knew we wanted to make a platformer with fighting, and but we just made two games where it was very combo-like fighting, where it's like Devil May Cry combat with Spyro, and in Shinobi you can do a lot of combo juggling and stuff like that. So we wanted to make a game where the hero was heavier and slower, more methodic, and you had to think about your jumps and stuff like that. And so that's where the road we were going down. But we struggled with a theme for what the game should be. And it came up again. It's just like, why don't you just make the game about yourself? I mean, you call it Crazy Viking Studios. It'd be absolutely ridiculous if your first game wasn't about a Viking. And we just laughed and said, yeah, you know what? You're right. Like, it would be really weird if we, called ourselves Crazy Viking Studio and then made a game about a bunch of hamsters or something, everybody would be like, what is this? So that's how that came about. And then it's not like a super exciting story. It's just kind of like bumbling around in the dark a little bit until you kind of like hit on something. And then we weren't even sure that we were going to stick with, Volgar the Viking as like a Viking game until we did a couple sprite tests and art tests to see what the game would look like. And then we're like, yeah, that looks cool. Let's do that. And then we settled on that and ran with it.
Well, I mean, it seems to have paid off.
Fortunately, yeah, luckily it did. I mean, you never know when you in video games. I mean, nowadays you got tons of market research and data and things like that. If you want to make something watered down that makes you money guaranteed, you're never going to make something truly fantastic, in my mind. But back in these days, you didn't have a lot of metrics and stuff to fly off of.
Well, at least the indie scene didn't.
No, the indie scene didn't at the time. I mean, we have it now because Steam is really, at least on Steam, which gives you a good idea almost everywhere. Because the tools have gotten so good. But at the time, our design philosophy was if we think it's going to be fun, we're not unique snowflakes. There's got to be other people out there with 8 billion people on the planet that are going to enjoy it too. So we just really focused on what we found was really fun to do. And if we were having a good time playing the game, then we just assumed other people might as well. And we felt that we had done something kind of special when we got to the point where we're building a game and then we'd load it up in order to test something. Like, for instance, I would create a new monster animation or something and hook it up to make sure it was playing correctly. And then when I loaded up the game, instead of just testing what I was trying to look at, I was playing it for an hour and forgetting what I was there to look for in the first place. And so when we hit that point, we're like, oh shit, okay, cool. This is actually really neat. But then we had to really focus on, like, when we were doing our work, that we were actually doing work and not here to play around and mess with the game. But that's how we settled on that.
Indeed. Anyway, I'm sure we could continue down the various bits and bobs of Volgar the Viking, but I do think it is time to shift to the sequel, Volgar the Viking 2. Because my first question here is, why now? What compelled you to make a sequel to the game, a good 10 years after the first one debuted?
Now, this is actually really funny story. So, to be completely 100% honest with you and everybody listening to this, I had no intention, and neither did Taryn. Neither one of us had any intention of making a sequel to Volgar the Viking. When we made that game, we did everything in that game that we felt that game needed to be for the genre that it was in and for what he did. We always felt that it was a well enough made game that if people had an itch to play a game like that, they would just go back and play Volgar. Just the same way that they go back and play Castlevania 3 over and over again, or Super Ghouls and Ghosts over and over again. They can just play Volgar because we did it. And so we kind of felt that was like its own self-contained experience. But we moved on, and it did really well. So we moved on to other things, exploring other character ideas in the Volgar universe with different abilities, different kinds of gameplay styles. Excuse me. And we're exploring different games at this point. But the whole time we're getting messages, emails, letters in the mail sometimes on occasion, like, where's Volgar 2? Are you guys ever going to work on a Volgar 2? And that went on for all the way up until now. It just never did stop. I mean, it did slow down a little bit in the last couple years or so, but I'm not kidding with you when I say probably 50 letters, 50 emails a year, 10 years later, several messages, maybe every other day, a couple of times a week in Facebook or Twitter or X, excuse me now, about where a sequel is. Sadly, Taryn, around 6 or 7 years ago, ended up with a condition that didn't allow him to sit at the computer for very long periods of time. So he had to go into semi-retirement. He's still having a lot of fun. He's still okay. But he couldn't continue as a full-time game developer at Crazy Viking. So when that happened, I had to do a little bit of soul searching. I was like, okay, well, now I'm not making video games with my best friend anymore. Do I hire a new engineer? Do I pursue making one of these games that we started? Do I just sell the company? Do I, sell the company and all the IP we own and just get rid of it? What do I do? And so I spent about a year trying to figure that out. And then a friend of mine, Mike Micah, who is the studio head at Digital Eclipse, said, hey, man, we have this initiative going on at Digital Eclipse where we're wanting to make these documentary collections and, make these really awesome things, which you all know now to be Karateka and
Llamasoft.
Jeff Minter, and then earlier on it was Street Fighter, and then the ones that I worked on when I first came there were the SNK collection, the Ninja Turtles was what I was responsible for, and the Blizzard arcade one.
Oh, so you worked at Digital Eclipse as well?
Yeah, so he convinced me to come over there and help, and so I did. That's what I was doing. I went over there for a while. I was like, yeah, I'll do that. I have nothing else going on. And it was really a really exciting time because I believe in the same things that they do, trying to do preservation, bringing, developer spotlights out and teaching people the history of these games that they love. So I did that, and it was right around a couple of years ago. So it was about 4 years in, right around when we were working on Blizzard Arcade Collection. I think it was right around that one. A different publisher took notice of all the back and forth and going on Twitter and other places about a Volgar sequel and stuff like that. And they're like, yeah, why hasn't there been a Volgar sequel? So they reached out to me and said, hey, we would like to pay for you to make a Volgar the Viking 2. And I told them up front, I was like, I haven't put thought into this. I don't know if there's a reason to make a Volgar 2. And they said, well, we think it'd be a really great idea. Can you just put together just think about it for a little while and give us like an overarching pitch of what you think it would, what it would be. And I was like, yeah, why not? So I did that, and they got excited about it. And then I was like, well, okay, this is awkward because now I came over here to help Digital Eclipse, and now I've got an opportunity to leave and go work on that again. And I was like, well, the right thing to do would be to tell Digital Eclipse that this is going on and give them, an opportunity to, take it up or pass. And again, the stars aligned again, just kind of like when, everything lined up with the first game. The second game, everything was lining up again too. Digital Eclipse at the time and Mike Micah wanted to get into self-publishing. They wanted to start publishing their own games like they did with Karateka and Llamasoft, and get into doing some original IP work. And so they're like, yeah, this is great. And of course they love the original game. So they're all about it. And so the thing that was really nice about that was that by bringing Volgar the Viking 2 to Digital Eclipse, I didn't have to work 2 full-time jobs. So for me, it all of a sudden became like this really cool scenario where instead of working at Digital Eclipse for 40 hours during the day and then having to manage all the business aspects of keeping Crazy Viking open for another 30, 40 hours every week, working an insane amount of time the whole time and never seeing my family and my little kids grow up was really brutal for about 6 years. And so to have this kind of marriage happen, all of a sudden my workload was cut in half because my 2 jobs were the same job. So that was really cool. And that's how it kind of got to Digital Eclipse. Yeah, I hope I answered your question there appropriately, thoroughly. I think that was the question, right? Like, how did it get to Digital Eclipse? Was that the...
It was how Volgar the Viking 2 came to be, but that did answer...
yeah, sure.
I mean, that did answer another question in how it got to our friends at Digital Eclipse. It's amazing how many times that studio has crossed our paths.
Yeah, our Rolodex is really weird and very large.
Yeah.
Yeah, Digital Eclipse is working on a lot of really fantastic stuff. There's other things they have going on there that I saw prior to the Atari purchase, which are really, really, really cool things that you guys should be probably pretty excited about when they announce it. But right now, they've got like obviously the things like that are announced, like Wizardry and which is cool, and Power Rangers coming out, which is pretty badass.
Yeah. I mean, we talked to like Stephen Frost and Chris Kohler about various projects previously. Also, Jeremy Williams and Dave Reese about their work on Atari 50. So, we got a lot of friends there. Like, anyway, so with all that in mind, what's new in Volgar the Viking 2? What's being done differently this time around?
Okay, so I'll try to keep this brief because there's a lot of really deep discussions that can happen here. So I will preface this with, like I said, I did not intend to make a second game. So when it came around to like, well, how do you make a Volgar the Viking 2? An incredible amount of thought went into that. I mean, I spent months just trying to figure out what that would be because of the question you're asking me right now. So I didn't want Volgar the Viking 2 to just be Volgar the Viking 1.2 or feel like it was a DLC or something like that. It had to feel like it was a true sequel, or why do it? Like,
or
I just didn't want to do that.
Why put in the effort to make a whole second game? Just pump out a DLC for the first one and go on your merry way, Right.
It's like, here's 5 new remixed levels from everything we did in the first game. Great. Here you go. Yeah. Sorry about that. I had to mute myself. It was a nasty burp.
That's fine.
Yeah, so I had to really think about what was going to make Volgar 2 a true sequel and what was going to be special about it. One of those things, in the narrative of the first game, you get Odin's attention because you die valiantly fighting off like 1,000 lizardmen while your village escapes, and you die on a mountain of dead bodies, and Odin's like, whoa, that guy's a total badass. So he resurrects you and sends you on this mission for him, and he says, if you accomplish this mission of killing Fafnir and finding out who's behind this problem that I'm having in Midgard, because I'm busy off doing other stuff, then I'll let you live out the rest of your mortal life with a guaranteed place in Valhalla, right? So that's what happens in the first game. You accomplish that, and so now you have Odin's favor, and you've become like a ruler of your own land. In the second game, you're older, and you're the king of the area he lives in. He's got an army now, things of that nature. But in the second game, one of the narrative things is that Odin is not your benefactor anymore. You are only brought back to life by the power of the Valkyries and your friends, the Valkyrie, and their power and their ability to bring you back, which is limited. So in the lore of Volgar the Viking, when you have the favor of Odin, you can come back as much as you want because he's the all-powerful Odin. But when the Valkyries do it, their power is tied to glory, basically. Like each Valkyrie can only give you can only give you a pool of 3 lives, and so your best friend, your love interest, can give you 3 lives. But the only way you can get other lives in Volgar is to do glorious things and collect treasure and points and score and stuff like that. And the higher your score goes, then the other Valkyries are able to donate some of their lives to you to keep your life pool growing. That life and death in Volgar 2 is tied directly into the narrative. I don't know if you guys are ever able to beat the first game or not, but one of the bad guys in the first game was a lich named Fracas. And he's like one of the things that has an influence over what's happening in Volgar 2. And so the whole theme of Volgar 2 is the life and death and you're at a will to press on. So basically the Valkyries have limited power, and anytime that you have to use a continue and they kind of like break nature and the natural order of things to bring you back on a continue, you lose a little bit of your soul. And so the theme of it is like, if you can keep continuing as much as you want, but at what cost to Volgar is that going to be? So one of the new features that is a standout feature in the second game that the first game did not have is that if you keep continuing enough, the game will kick into an undead mode. You've lost your soul. You've become undead. Basically, it's like getting a soft game over. You pretty much have failed at the game. And a hardcore player, when they recognize what this is and the features kicked on, they're probably going to stop the game, go back to the beginning, delete the profile, and start over. And this is similar to the way that the feature used to work in the original game, where you had two paths. You had the Valkyrie path that had limited lives, and you had the Crystal path. Now, if you were a speedrunner or a person who was trying to get the best ending in the original game, you'd run on the Valkyrie path. But if you ran out of lives, the game would kick you back out into the Crystal path, where you could keep playing and go all the way to the end and get an ending. But mostly, if you were trying to get the best ending, when that happened to you, you had to quit the game and start over again. So this is a similar feature, but it's what I call a soft game over. So it's a bit of I don't want to use the word crutch. That's not really the appropriate word I'm looking for here, but it is a learning tool for people who struggle with games like this to have a little bit of fun in the game and get to experience more than they normally would in a game like this, and maybe ease them into the idea of getting good. So we have this undead mode. When you become undead, you can't be you can be knocked around. Like if you bump into a monster, you still have knockback like you would in the regular game. So you're getting hit, but you wouldn't actually take any damage. And the only really way for you to die once you become undead is to fall into a unrecoverable death pit. So this allows you to see a lot of the content in the game, but you get the worst ending, which is a pretty horrific outcome for Volgar if you do that. But so that's one of the features. Another big difference between the two games is there's a lot more collectibles and power-ups now that give you new abilities and stuff, which also allow you to be hit more. If you're fully powered up in Volgar 2, you can take a lot more hits than you could in the original game. So that's something else that's brand new. I don't want to go too much into the detail of what the powers are, because that would spoil some discovery. But something else is kind of silly that's in a new game that wasn't in the original game is that we have swinging ropes, kind of like that you would have in Rastan. Not just static ropes. And aside from that, the worlds are a lot bigger than they were in the original game, but there's a lot of checkpoints. There's a lot more checkpoints. In the original game, you only got a checkpoint when you completed a map transition. In this game, there is quite a few checkpoints for every map. Those are optional. So if you are somebody who's going for the best of the best and bragging rights and stuff like that, you can smash those checkpoints and make them invalid and get a whole bunch of points and extra lives and stuff like that if you do. But if you die, you're going to get set back quite a bit. That's what I can think of off the top of my head. Of course, there's new areas to explore, a new story. There's several new endings. The original game had 3 endings. This one has 6, I believe, if I remember correct. There's really cool new boss fights. There is a secret level that you can discover with a secret boss fight if you play well enough in the game. It's not as hardcore to access as it was in the first game to get to that, but it is still a challenge to discover that. Those are the major new features. There's save game. I just totally missed that. So there's save game in this one. So you could actually, once you get to a checkpoint or a map transition or whatever, the game will save to a profile and you can quit playing and come back to it later. The original Volgar game didn't allow for that. It was like a true arcade game where if you stopped playing at any point, that was it. I mean, it's like you walked away from the arcade machine. It was going to restart. And that's pretty much it.
Sounds like quite a bit has been instilled upon it, this sequel. And we certainly look forward to seeing what gets uncovered, when the game comes out next month.
Yep, just 3 weeks away.
Oh, man.
Indeed. I suppose my final question at this point is, have you sorted out the pricing on Volgar yet?
For Volgar 2?
Yeah, Volgar 2, sorry.
Volgar 2 is, if you're talking US, it's on sale right now if you pre-order it. I think the retail price is $19.99. Holy crap! Let me double check that because I don't want to say something
Live
wrong.
research.
Yeah, sorry.
It's fine.
They make me juggle so many things that it's like.
It's better to make sure it's good now than we have to try and edit and post.
Yeah, I'll tell you now. It is. It is $19.99 retail. If you pre-order it, it is $15.99 for the standalone. There's a Volgar the Viking 1 and 2 bundle that retails for $24.99. I don't know if that's on sale or not for pre-order. It might be.
And is that bundle like live now? Like, so basically somebody does the bundle, they can pre-order Volgar 2 and we have Volgar 1 ready to play right now type deal, or is that bundle go live?
That should be how it works.
All right.
Yes, that should be how that works. The bundles are they're not on every platform, so not every platform allows bundles. So the bundle is on PlayStation and Xbox for sure. Nintendo doesn't allow it. Yes, I'm pretty sure that's on Steam too. Let me double check. I actually had Steam open here just a second ago.
Yeah. Because I know there are some bundles that you don't get anything until the game actually launches, so it's better to make that distinction now for people who don't have Volgar 1.
No, Steam doesn't have a bundle because the way that the rights work for the two different games aren't the same.
Oh, right, because of the Adult Swim Games kerfuffle.
Yeah, which has actually been transferred back over to me just very recently, but there's still some weirdness with that. But
yeah,
on platforms where you can't get the bundles, they've been appropriately discounted. So if you bought them separately, it would be the same, if that makes any sense. Yeah. You're just not getting it in a bundle. Mm-hmm. So if you were to buy 1 and 2 together, and on the platforms that don't support bundles, you'd get them for the same bundle price, or pretty close, if not. But it's on Steam, PlayStation 4, 5, all the Xboxes, GOG. I mean, wherever people play games, Switch.
Yeah. Smart fridge. Okay, maybe not smart fridge.
Not yet smart fridge. I mean, that's the first game. The first game's like on everything like smart fridges.
Yeah. Oh, all right then. So it was wonderful having you on our program, Kris, to talk about Volgar and Volgar 2. I know we enjoyed Volgar 1 up to a point.
I'm not good at it, but it's fun that it exists. Yeah.
But we're certainly looking forward to Volgar 2's impending release. And hopefully it will do as well as the first one did.
That'd be nice. Then I get to keep making video games for a while. Yeah,
and
that'd
then
be cool.
I get to keep feeding my family. Wait, what?
Yep, exactly.
I know how this works.
Yeah. Buying food for the kids is good.
Yeah. Keeps DFS away.
Yeah. Anyway, the game is Volgar the Viking 2. It's available for pre-order on Steam, and I presume the consoles as well. It's coming out August 6th, 2024 at a price of $19.99. So pre-order it now for $5 off. And Petty Fan, play us to the next segment. All right, so welcome to the topic of discussion. As previously mentioned, we are picking up our Perfect Dark discussion from 2 weeks ago, where we talked about the game itself, the single player, and all that. But, Perfect Dark, I'm not exactly sure about Perfect Dark Zero because I never played that game.
I played it briefly and I hated it.
Yeah, but I certainly I certainly played a lot of Perfect Dark for the N64 back in 2002, 2001. And chief among them was the multiplayer, which is not a surprise because, when you talk about the Nintendo 64, one of the grand legacies is its 4-player multiplayer capabilities. And one of the games that's always like top of the list is GoldenEye. One of the vanguards of that system's multiplayer fun fests. So it would stand to reason that Perfect Dark would build and expand upon what GoldenEye built. Though you might be wondering why Perfect Dark doesn't have, when you talk about N64 multiplayer, it doesn't reach the top of the list like GoldenEye does. Well, that has to do with the amount of people who bought it. 2 million people versus 8 million people. It's really simple math. Plus the year 2000. The N64 was already on its way out. I mean, that was the last big year of the platform. But even then, like, the Dreamcast was out. The hype for the PlayStation 2 was building. So the N64 was, looking a bit creaky then. And, that gets into the problem with, the multiplayer, which were also in GoldenEye. But I think they were really exacerbated in this game because I just remember playing it back in 2001 and just thinking that, they really should have announced this for the GameCube because of how much chugging that game did in multiplayer. It did it in single player. Like, that's just kind of what N64 games did. But, I mean, Perfect Dark strove to do a lot more than what you'd expect from console multiplayer at the time. Even today, it's shockingly robust. Now, there's like the expected stuff like deathmatch and capture the flag, King of the Hills here. Not sure how standard that was by 2000. I mean, capture the flag was in GoldenEye, if I'm remembering correctly. So, it's got all this standard stuff, but, what did this bring to the table that was new? Several things, in fact. One of the biggest, bots. Now, I know that's maybe not all that eyebrow raising here and now, or even some years later. But do you know how unusual it was to have bots in a console game in 2000?
In a multiplayer type thing, pretty uncommon.
Unheard of. Like, you just...
If they existed, they would have been terrible, usually.
Yeah.
Either terrible bad or terrible, oh great, the bot just headshot me as soon as I entered its field of vision.
Something like that.
Or worse, it just broke the game's logic because it was too much for the console to try and deal with.
Yeah. The point is bots was something that was pretty standard on the PC side of things. But once again, like, in terms of options and, all of that stuff, the PC was usually very far ahead of what a console could do. But like I said, Perfect Dark was trying a lot of stuff. And it's not just having bots, but programmable bots as well. That is to say, you could alter the AI of the bots. Like, you could have them be more aggressive, or defensive. Like I said, this is mind-blowing shit for 2000s on the Nintendo 64. You know, it's one of those things that's maybe hard to convey because we are talking about 25 years by this point.
Yeah. If this was something like on the PC or even the original Xbox, people would be like, oh, that's quaint. But no, this is the N64.
Yeah. I'm like, and, you know, you could have bots up to like 8 players. Once again, this, you know, and I think that's included up to like 4 players as well. Once again, like, this is mind-blowing for the system. And, like, you know, even on the PlayStation 2, you really didn't see these things too often. But, you know, Perfect Dark also brought unique things to multiplayer sessions, whether it be thematic, like hold the laptop instead of capture the flag. You pass around a laptop. It's the same. It's the same thing mechanically, if I'm remembering correctly. But, you know, it's something that fits in with the sci-fi spy theme a lot more than, you know, vanilla capture the flag.
Right.
Also, you have hacking, which is exactly what it says. You know, you've got to go into, you know, like Datadyne or whatever, and you've got to hack, you know, secret information, and, you know, it plays out. You know, you got to spend time hacking. You know, so, like, it's functionally similar to Capture the Base, but once again, just themed around Perfect Dark's, well, themes. Like, so, like I said, there, you know, and I'm not even done in terms of the overall multiplayer, because this game also brought co-op, full-on co-op to the proceedings. Once again, you did not see this shit in Nintendo 64 games. Even PC games weren't high on co-op modes. They certainly exist, make no mistake, but far less common than, you know, deathmatch, capture the flag, and all that stuff. Because, you know, that's dealing with the campaign stuff. Like, and worth noting, in co-op mode, you know, you play Johanna and the mysterious sister with blonde hair, Velvet Dark. Not much is known about her, though she was at one point considered to be the star of her own game. Like, it's one of those things that never went anywhere. Like, but the most unique to this day multiplayer mode, and something I wish that some other game would rip off, is the counter-operative mode. So what counter-operative is, one player plays as Joanna Dark, the other player plays as Datadyne Security. So it's asymmetrical multiplayer in the year 2000. You know, have I mentioned that Rare was insane?
A few times, yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely one of those. I wish we could grab some classic Rare devs for the show, but
I mean, we've done it. Like, believe it or not, like, you know, we talked to Grant Kirkhope forever and a day ago. I'm like, so one example, you know, it's like But that's neither here nor there. Like, anyway, so counter-operative. The way this works is Joanna has 1 life, but she has a big life bar. The security guards, there are many of them, but they have a very small life bar. So, you stack up, you basically player 2 has many lives, but not a lot of energy. Player 1 has a lot of energy, but 1 life. And and you pit your skills against each other. Like I said, it's a mode I've never seen before or since. In this particular framing. There's certainly been other asymmetrical multiplayer things, but nothing quite like this. Like I said, it's something I hope makes a return in the new Perfect Dark, because it was my favorite mode. Like I said, I certainly enjoyed up to a point, mainly because of that goddamn sniper rifle that can shoot through walls. Like, that weapon was a pile of bullshit and chips.
Also screen, screen peeking.
Yeah. I mean, also, not coincidentally, my older brother's favorite weapon in the game. Like, now with all that in mind, the definitive way to play the Perfect Dark multiplayer is the Xbox Live Arcade, Xbox version, because it has all the multiplayer feature sets, but it can actually run that at 60 FPS and I believe 1080p.
Xbox version is 720.
There we go. I'm like, I wasn't sure if it was 1080 or 720.
It says 1080, but it's lying.
I see. Point is, it's in high def. It's the textures have been remastered, and the multiplayer is online. Though I'm not sure how many people you might be able to find with this particular title.
Yeah.
Once again, even though Perfect Dark offers a lot of multiplayer, it just never earned the chops that, GoldenEye or, want to talk about Microsoft FPS's Halo have. It's just how the cookie crumbles sometimes.
Oh, I don't think the Xbox version lets you play with bots.
Huh.
I mean, it makes sense because it has online multiplayer.
Still, that's a curious omission.
Let me see about if I can just try and force.
But yeah, there's combat simulator, cooperative, counter-operative.
Yeah, I can't.
Huh. Oh well, it's not a huge deal breaker.
It's not a deal breaker, but it's still one of those things that's like, you took away a landmark feature from the original that could have been done real easy on 360 hardware.
Yeah. It's curious.
Yeah.
Like, well,
unless I'm missing something. Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, I think that'll about do it for Perfect Dark's multiplayer. And yeah, that'll about do it for this installment of Fragments of Silicon. So coming up on the week ahead, once again, we do have a new episode of MSP planned, like against all odds. Now, no Friday show this week. And coming up on the Sunday reviews, we'll be having reviews of Mango Mischief, Electrosoft 2, Lifeless Moon, and Nyx Quest, Kindred Spirits. So until then, I shall wish you good gaming